Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. It's Colby here. Today we're going to be talking about Microsoft Lists. And specifically, we're going to be looking at integrating Microsoft Lists into Microsoft Teams. What's really neat about that is that Teams creates this kind of single pane of glass interface that allows us to build these amazing lists, which are pretty much very similar to SharePoint lists if you've ever done SharePoint in the past. So yeah, let's get started. All right, so if you haven't heard about Microsoft Lists yet, in May of 2020 of this year, Microsoft introduced Microsoft Lists to Office 365. And so if you've got an Office 365 account, you should be able to start playing around with this guy. You can also, through Office.com, access Microsoft Lists in like a kind of a separate app interface if you wanted to. But for the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to be looking at it through Microsoft Teams. All right, so here I've already actually inserted some lists already, but we're going to create our own. So if you click on a team channel and you go ahead and click this plus icon, which allows you to add a custom tab to your channel, what you'll see is this new option to add lists to it. So if you go ahead and click that, it'll tell you to select save to finish adding the list to your channel. So just go ahead and select save. And so it brings up these two options in the list. So you can either create a list, which is kind of creating a list from like blank. It also gives you some other options in there, or you can create it from an existing list. So say you've got an Excel spreadsheet or you've got an existing SharePoint list, you can easily integrate that into Microsoft Lists. So for our first example, we're actually going to go ahead and insert an existing list. So if I say add existing list, here below it gives me some sample lists that I already have. Another really neat thing is you can actually insert a link to SharePoint. So if any of your SharePoint lists don't appear in here, you can add that link up here. But in my case, I actually have my SharePoint list down here. Before we add that, I'd just like to show you my SharePoint list in SharePoint itself. So it's a really super basic list that I created. Essentially, the premise of this list is I've got some items in my stock and they're distributed across different stores, and I want to kind of keep track of the prices as well as how many I have and whether they're in stock, and obviously which store they're in currently. So you'll notice the first column is just a regular text column. The next column is actually a currency column. Then I've got a numbers column for the amount, another text column for my store location, and then this in stock is actually a calculated column. And basically what it does is it looks at the amount number, and if that's greater than 0, then the item is in stock. It's set to yes, else it's set to no. So in this case where we've got 0 items in stock, it's obviously not, there's no items in stock. All right, so just so you understand what's going on there. Another thing what I did in this list is I created a custom form using Power Apps. And if you haven't done that before, it's pretty straightforward. You've got this little Power Apps option in SharePoint. So if you go ahead and click that, you can actually select this customize form, and it allows you to build that in Power Apps. But you'll notice if I click on new, because I've already done that, this is my custom form that I've built. And so the whole idea behind this form is you can go ahead and add a new item. So let's just say we say pink scarf, okay, and we're selling those for $10.99. We have 2 of those in stock. This item right here is actually a view only field, and that's just because it's a calculated field, so I didn't want anyone to be able to touch edit that at all. But you could certainly take this out for the adding an item to the list, and then only show it if they're viewing that item, if they click on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say this is in a Vancouver store and hit save. And it'll pop down below there. So now we can see all our items in the list. Obviously in SharePoint you have different views, so I've actually created a view called to order. And so if you've got any items in here that are got 0 quantity in stock, they'll show up in here. And so what's really cool about lists, go back. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select the SharePoint list. As I was gonna say, what's really cool about it is it brings in all those views that you had in SharePoint lists, brings them into Microsoft Lists for you. So you don't have, all that stuff is managed for you by Microsoft Lists. You don't have to do any of that magic. So I'm gonna go ahead and click this guy, and that's all I had to do. So it's actually, what makes this so nice is it looks like it's seamless. It looks like it's part of Teams, like built and baked into Teams, but it's actually referencing that SharePoint list. And if I make any changes to that SharePoint list, those will show up directly here, and vice versa. If I make changes in here, they'll show up on that list. And what's also cool is if I go new item, it actually shows my Power App that I built, for the Power App form that I built for this. So it's pretty much everything that I had in my SharePoint list there, it's brought it in here. And as I had said before, you've got that view. You can even change that up here. I can also change how I see this. So say I want to make these a little more compact, I can do that. I personally like a little spacing added to it. You could certainly filter it. So say I only wanted to see, I don't know, items that cost $10.99, right? That shows up here. Or if we only want to see items in our Vancouver location, we can do that as well. And so yeah, it's super cool. And you again, you could save that view. So like, let's just say Vancouver items. And if you leave this as checked as public, that means everyone who has access to this Teams channel will be able to see that. If you unselect that, that just means it's a private saved view. So if I hit save now, you'll notice it'll show here, but if anyone goes and looks at their list, they're not going to see the Vancouver items. So that's pretty sweet. Another really cool thing is you've also got this quick edit. And so again, if you're familiar with SharePoint, this looks very familiar to you. You know, SharePoint has that option as well, and you can go ahead and add the item this way as well if you don't want to add like items separately. So that just, you know, makes it a little easier. And then if you want to open this in SharePoint, it has these 3 little dots here, give you option to open this directly in SharePoint, which is that page I showed you before, as well as export to Excel. So say you have someone that would like to see this, but you don't want to share this directly to them. You don't want to have the individual added to the team. You can export to Excel. So super easy. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at adding a list, a Microsoft list, just like a blank list, as opposed to importing an existing one. So to do that, you're just going to click on this option called Create a List. And so what that's going to bring up is a variety of different options. So it actually brings up the From Existing List Again option, which is quite nice. So if you click that, you'll notice it kind of brings you back to a similar view of some existing lists you have. But if I go back here, you can see you can create a list from an Excel spreadsheet, a blank list, which just gives you one default column, which is the title column. Again, same thing if you've ever created a list in SharePoint. But it also it gives you really cool options of these existing templates. And what's really neat is if you click any of these templates, it pre-populates these templates with some mock data. And so you can get an idea of the look and feel of that template, as opposed to just kind of having a guessing game. Oh, I'm not really sure how this works. So you can clearly see that there's some kind of color highlighting going on with certain fields. So even this field here, this priority field, there's some like logos. So if it's a high priority item, it's got this arrow pointing upwards. You know, critical, it's got this X. You know, with the status, there's different statuses like in progress or blocked. You know, the colors change depending on the status option. You could see with the URLs, these different URL fields, you can see they're clickable. Yeah, so like makes it like really easy and a great way to visualize these templates. And again, there's like a bunch of different ones. So this issue tracker is kind of like a bug tracker. You know, if say you're a developer and you're building an app and you need to track your different bugs in your app, this is a great way of doing that and sharing it across your team. You know, maybe you're doing you're working in the medical field, right? And you've got patients that you want to track. This is kind of a pre-built patient list, allows you to do that. So just like super easy to do. What we're going to do is we're going to hit back and we're just going to do a blank list for now. So I'm going to hit blank list, and what I want to do is for this team, I want to give them an idea of our different orders that are coming through. So we already have that list of our current stock, what items are in stock. But now I want to actually do a list that showcases our orders that are coming in from our website, for instance. So let's just call this our order list. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward there. And maybe we can give it a description in case someone's reading up on this. So this list highlights our current orders from our website. Okay. Oops. Spelling there. Okay, website. So what's cool is it gives you these little options to pick some colors. So we can, I don't know, let's pick this lavender color. And then you even get to choose an icon for that. So let's see, orders. Yeah, I think this clipboard kind of makes more sense. That kind of, or I mean, we could even go the piggy bank, but let's just go this clipboard for now. So just hit create, and it's pretty quick. Builds it pretty quickly, and so already we've got our form built. And as I said before, it creates a default column for you, much the same as SharePoint does. This title column, and you can certainly rename that column if you want. So you know, to rename that, since maybe I don't like title, maybe I want to say, I don't know, product name. If you click quick edit, actually you don't even have to click quick edit, sorry. You just click this down arrow. Oh, actually I was wrong. If you click quick edit and you hit rename, it allows you to rename it. So yeah, let's just say product name. I'm going to hit return, and you can see it's product name. Obviously I can see it's a little squished in there, so you know, knowing my product names are probably going to be a little big, you can actually just drag the column out a bit just to kind of create more room for your row items. Let's see, let's maybe add a number field and make that field my, let's just say quantity. So that's just going to be the quantity of items that we have. And then maybe I want to say, give a date time, right? And so the date time could be, and we're just going to call this date. That could be when the person ordered the item. And then let's see, if I click on more column types, again, this is exactly like if you've played with SharePoint before, this SharePoint list, you're very familiar with this look and this interface. Let's see, let's create this column called status, because basically what I want to do is I want to get an idea of when a person orders their item, if it's been accepted yet, if it's been shipped, you know, where is it in processing essentially. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a choice field. And so nice thing about choice fields is it just gives the person a certain amount of options. So we don't need to have someone actually have to go in and type the status, because that can be, for one, cumbersome, but another reason could be like maybe they enter a status that you're not familiar with and can be confusing. So this is a great way of kind of restricting people to, the different options they can add to that item. All right, so what we're going to do is maybe we'll add a status of processing. Okay, so maybe you got to process the item first, so like package it, etc. Maybe we can add this status ready to ship. So the item's been packaged, it's now sitting and waiting to ship, and then we can say shipped. Okay, so just like 3 simple options, really straightforward. In our case, we're going to do a drop-down menu, so they have to fill that in, and we're going to add a default option here. So you don't normally have to, but it's nice to just have, like, the default option is the item's processing. So when you add the item, that's going to be the default. So they don't need to go and have to select that choice when they create an item. All right, so this is looking good. We are going to require that this column contains information, meaning that when you add an item to this list, it must have some sort of option added to this field. Okay, and I think everything else is good. We don't want to enforce unique values, meaning that you can only have unique values in that column. You can't have duplicates in other rows. We don't want to have that because obviously we could have multiple items being processed, right? All right, so I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to hit refresh here. There you go. So sometimes I find it kind of lags a little. So if you just hit this refresh area, it kind of reloads the tab, and you should notice your new column show up. All right, so I'm just going to resize these a little, space them out a bit, just to make it look a little nicer and things aren't too squished or condensed. And we're going to go ahead and hit new item. And so this is the default form that is built for us using Microsoft Lists, and this comes pre-baked in. When you create those items, you can certainly customize that, as I showed you with the SharePoint list that I built. I built a customized Power App form, but in this case, we're just going to keep it as stock for now. So let's just say someone ordered green socks, and they ordered 2 of those. And we go ahead and enter a date. Maybe it was yesterday, 1 p.m. It's processing. As I said before, pick the default, right? Processing. You also notice that if the field is a required field, it'll have this red little asterisk by it, just to make sure you're aware of that. All right, so I think those are all the fields. So if I hit save, boom, shows up. And so what we can do is let's add another item, and let's add blue shoes. Maybe they bought 5 of those. 8:30 a.m. And what we're going to do is, in this case, we're going to do ready to ship. The reason I'm going to do that is, again, I'm going to show you how you can go ahead and create some views for your users. So maybe what you want to do is you want to format this so that you only show process. You only want to show processing. And so items processed. And so I'm actually going to make this a public view. And so that way people in this team can quickly go ahead and use this view to view those different items. And I'm also going to create another view. If I just go to all items here, create another view called ready to ship. And then I'm going to go back in here, save this view as, and I'm going to say items ready to ship. All right, save that. And so what makes this nice and easy is now I can, if I just want to quickly look at, what items need to be shipped, I just click that view and it shows it filters it for me, and I don't need to have to go in the filter menu. And I mean, obviously that's a very simple filter, but maybe you've got very complex filters, like it's being processed, but there's a certain amount of quantity, or there's a certain product name, or I mean, it could go on and on, right? So like the filtering could get very complex. So the views option make that nice and easy to kind of break down and view it. And so what's really neat is, again, going back to this Microsoft Lists area, if I refresh this page, you'll now notice my list that I've created. So both my lists here. And if you go ahead and click on that, it'll show up just like it did in Teams, but in here. And so you can do the exact same editing that you did in Teams in here as well. And the one thing you'll notice compared to the Teams area is you've got a bit more options. So you've got this Power Apps options to integrate this list into Power Apps. So you can either create a form for it when you add a new item, as I said with the SharePoint list, or you can create an app that utilizes this data. You can build a Power Automate flow, so maybe it's a reminder flow, or maybe you want to create a flow that triggers every time you add an item. It needs to do some type of workflow. You can share the list, again, export to Excel. So it's really nice little interface, and again, on the side here, you've got access to your views as well as filtering. So what's really nice is Microsoft kind of makes this streamlined. So if you're used to the Teams interface and then you have to come in here and work in this interface, they look the same. They're cohesive. It's not like jumping into a brand new app that you got to learn all different things. It's very similar. If you're someone that's used to SharePoint lists, this is super similar. This is pretty much the exact same thing as a SharePoint list, but what's nice about it is it looks more baked in and native to Microsoft Teams. So hopefully you really enjoyed this short little tutorial. So yeah, we took a look at using Microsoft lists and how to integrate existing lists, so whether they be existing SharePoint lists or Excel spreadsheets as a tab into your Teams channels. We also looked at building your own lists, as well as customizing the different views for that list, and looking at how you can also customize different forms if you want to in Power Apps. So thanks so much for joining me. Hopefully you'll give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe if you would like to follow along with me for any of my upcoming videos. Have a good day. Bye.